So welcome everybody to Checkout TV, and this is the overview of the history of the Grand Prix, I guess. So please like, subscribe, comment below, do all that good stuff, help the channel, and let's get into it from the very beginning. In 1998, the World Grand Prix appears on the PDC calendar for the first time, and the tournament took place instead of the World Pairs Championship on the calendar. After the World Championships and the World Match Play, it's the third regular television tournament on the PDC circuit. First held in Rochester in England in 1998 and 1999, but since it's been synonymous with Ireland. The event moved to Ireland in 2000 via Rosslare, and it's been held annually in Dublin's City West Hotel since 2001. For the first year of the tournament in Ireland in 2000 until 2016, Irish and Northern Irish players get a chance to qualify into the first round proper. Special to this event is you not only have to finish with a double, but you have to start on a double, which is called double in, double out. Most successful player is, obviously, Phil Taylor, winning the title on no less than 11 occasions. Michael Van Gerwen has now collected 5 titles in Dublin between 2012 and 2019. James Wade is the only player to have won the title more than once, claiming it in 2007 and 2010. Alan Warner in 2001, Colin Lloyd in 2005, and Robert Thornton in 2015, Darrell Gurney in 2017, and Gerwin Price in 2020, and finally Johnny Clayton in 2021 have proved capable of hitting doubles all week long. The only players to have ever completed a perfect 9-dart finish in this double start, double finish format in the Dublin era are Northern Ireland's Brendan Dolan, who made it on October the 8th, 2011. It immediately gave him his nickname, the History Maker. James Wade and Robert Thornton both hit one in 2014 in the same match against each other. So that's pretty cool as well. With that brief overview out the way, let's get on to the first edition of the tournament in 1998. The tournament was held in Rochester, located in the southeast of England, and that's been the chosen location for the first couple of years. It's played over 5 days in a knockout system and was played in a set that went over the best of 3 legs rather than 5 like in the Worlds. During the first edition, 16 players competed for the title. 4 of these 16 players were seeded, and the Dream final would take place on the last day. Number 1 in the world, Rod Harrington, took on the world champion Phil Taylor. Of all the seeded players, only the number 2 seed did not survive the first round. Alan Warner losing the first round to Shane Burgess, who takes over the seeding of Warner and reaches the semi-finals along with 3 other seeded players. In the semis, Phil Taylor beat Shane Burgess quite easily, 11-2, and Rod Harrington beat Peter Manley 11-8 in an exciting duel. The finale goes to Phil Taylor, and he wins 13-8 and crowns himself as the first World Grand Prix champion. We're in Rochester again in 1999, but it's slightly different this time. The 16 players are divided into 4 groups. In the group phase, they play a double knockout system, which means you can lose a match in that phase and still qualify. That made a little difference in the end, as 4 seeded players all won their group and all made it to the semi-finals. In the first semi, Phil Taylor beat Rod Harrington 5-4 in sets in a very close game, and the other semi-final is also decided in a final set where Shane Burgess beats Peter Manley. The finale again is a prey for Taylor, who wins 6-1 and crowns himself the World Grand Prix champion for the second time in a row. What a surprise, eh? 10 months into the new millennium, the tournament moved to Ireland, where it is held in Rosslare just the one time. The tournament was again played over 5 days, but different again to the previous year. In 2000, there were 24 players involved, including 2 players who were qualifiers from Ireland and or Northern Ireland. And the top 8 in the world received a bye in the first round, and the tournament was played in a knockout format. For the first time, a Dutchman was on the start list, Roland Shelton, who lost his first match to Welshman and BDO stalwart Richie Burnett. It's also the first Grand Prix for Colin Lloyd, then only 27 years of age, shows that his quarter-final in the World Match Play that year had been no fluke. He beat Jamie Harvey and then in the second round, the number 4 in the world, Rod Harrington. However, the semi-finals, he does not reach. Dennis Priestley puts a stop to that. With the exception of Harrington, all other top players reach the semis. And in the first semi, Phil Taylor shows his supremacy over Dennis Priestley, And in the second semi-final, Shane Burgess is responsible for the elimination of Peter Manley for the second year in a row. The final again is a prayer for Phil Taylor, who, just like the year before, beat Shane Burgess and crowns himself the World Grand Prix champion for the third time in a row. In 2001, the tournament moves again, but this time to its more permanent home and spiritual place, the City West Hotel in Dublin. The field is set for 32 participants, something which today is still the case, and is still being played over 5 days, something that may change later. In 2001, its current tournament format was instated. It immediately gave the opportunity to the underdogs. In the first round that year, which is played over the best of 3 sets, the number 1 in the world, Peter Manley, and triple champion Phil Taylor fell at the first hurdle. Manley lost to Martin Adams, a BDO player who qualified for that tournament, and Phil Taylor lost to Kevin the Artist Painter, which happens to be Kevin Painter's only win over Taylor in 33 attempts. It was the first defeat ever for Taylor at the World Grand Prix. This ensured that the tournament became wide open, and it benefited the number 2 in the world, Alan Warriner. He grabbed his only PDC major title at the end of October in 2001 by beating Roland Scholten 8-2 in the final. Scholten had made his debut in the Grand Prix a year earlier, as mentioned, and he became the first Dutchman ever to participate in the World Grand Prix. He played a great tournament in 2001, beating Rod Harrington in the first round, then went on to beat Mick Manning, John Part and John Lowe on his way to the final. Beside his place in the final, Scholten also had the highest finish that year with a 1.64 checkout. Roland was also the first unseeded player ever to get to the final of the Grand Prix. As for 2002, Taylor has a mission to revenge last year's loss. He only loses 3 sets in the final against the number 2 in the world, John Part. All of the matches, he wipes his opponents off the stage. In 2002, Taylor beats Keith Deller 2-0. Then he beats Irishman Jack McKenna in the second round by the same figure, Mark Holden in the quarters, and Peter Everson, the victim, in the semis 6-0. Taylor then averages over 100 in the final, something which is extremely rare in the double-in, double-out tournament, as he beat John Part 7-3. Of the 8 seeded players, 3 do not survive the first round. Peter Manley is retired in the first round for the second consecutive year. His executioner is Mark Holden. Dennis Ovens loses to Dave Smith, and defending champion Alan Warriner is surprised by Richie Buckle. Moving on to 2003, and it's almost a carbon copy of 2002. Phil Taylor is supreme and wins for the second year in a row, claiming his 5th title, beating John Part in the final again. Roland Scholten continues to do well in Ireland, reaching the semi-finals after defeating John Lowe, Dennis Ovens and Colin Lloyd. In the semi-finals, however, he does lose to Phil Taylor. Peter Manley also felt very much at home in this tournament. Double in, double out suits him very well, but he had to settle for an exit in the semi-finals for the 4th time in history. What stands out this year is that only one ranked player does not reach the second round. Ronnie Baxter loses his first match to Kevin Painter. Painter is also the only non-seeded player in the quarter-finals. It is the second time after 1999 in history that the semi-final lineup is filled with the number 1 through 4 seeds. And it's on to 2004 when the tournament returns to Dublin in the autumn. Phil Taylor, of course, is again the big favourite. He had already won the championship and the World Match Play that year, and it seemed no one could stop him. Yet that happens when qualifier Andy Calaby has the day of his life and beats the Power in the first round 2-0. When the number 2 and 6 seed in the world, John Part and Wayne Mardle, also lose in the first round. The tournament is now completely open. Calaby will not only beat Phil Taylor in 2004, but Dennis Priestley as well, his second spell. The fairy tale for Calaby ends in the quarter-final when Alan Warriner beats him. It will eventually be the number 3 in the world who wins the tournament, who is Colin Lloyd, taking his first major TV title and crowned the World Grand Prix champion in 2004 by beating Alan Warriner in the final. In particular, the semi-finals of the 2004 are spectacular. Both are decided in the 11th and deciding set. Alan Warriner beats Steve Beaton and Colin Lloyd beats Ronnie Baxter. As for 2005, a year after his victory, Colin Lloyd comes back as world number 1 and reaches the final again. This time, however, he faces Phil Taylor in the final, and the Power won't lose in 2 consecutive years. Taylor clearly shows who is the best and wins the final 7-1. John McGowan from Northern Ireland has a fantastic year, He gets to the quarterfinals after victories over Alan Cage and Peter Manley. He himself and his family had not expected to get to the quarterfinals because on that day they had planned the marriage of their son. McGowan is flown by helicopter back and forth to the wedding and is back in time to play. He loses the quarterfinal to Dennis Smith. In 2005, we see the future winner James Wade for the first time. He loses in his debut in the first round to Keith Rooney. Big Roland Scholten is again the only Dutch competitor, but 2005 is not his year. He lost in the first round to good old Dennis Priestley. The former world champion will get to the semis this year, and he loses to Colin Lloyd 6-4. Taylor this year once again is in a different class. The Power only loses one set in the entire tournament, an absolute record. In 2006, the tournament is all about the Premier League in 2007. After the World Grand Prix, the top 6 players in the world will be sure of the place in the prestigious competition. However, all pre-tournament favourites for that place go out prematurely, and it is outsider Terry Jenkins, who takes a Premier League spot. He reaches the final in Ireland by beating Peter Manley in the semi-finals. In the finals, Taylor is his opponent, who is unbeatable again this year. For Peter Manley, it is the 5th time he loses in the semis, a record. After 2 good years, the world number 1 in the world, Colin Lloyd, loses his first round in this year's competition. Dennis Priestley repeats his performance from the year earlier and reaches the semi-final. For Priestley, it's the 3rd time in this tournament, but unfortunately he meets his biggest rival for the 2nd time in the semis. Phil Taylor, again, is too good for Dennis the Menace. Taylor has now won 7 of the 9 Grand Prix. Just an incredible percentage. In 2007, there are clear changes on the horizon in the darts landscape. The seeding list contains many new names. All of them will play an important role in the sport in the upcoming years. Adrian Lewis, Terry Jenkins and James Wade are seeded for the first time in the tournament. Adrian Gray becomes the 3rd player after Kevin Painter and Andy Calaby, who succeeds to beat Taylor in the tournament. In 2007, Gray punishes every mistake to the best player in the world and wins surprisingly 2-0. Gray loses to Canadian ace John Part later, who competes in the semi-final lineup, which further consists of number 2, number 3 and number 4 in the world. Part loses his semi-final to Terry Jenkins, and the brand new world match play champion James Wade beats Raymond van Barneveld on the same day. Wade then also beats Terry Jenkins in the final and picks up his 2nd major title of the year. So ladies and gentlemen, that is 10 years of the Grand Prix, which brings to an end part 1 of this little mini series ahead of the 2022 edition of the tournament, held from the 3rd to the 9th of October, but this time in Leicester, I believe. So please like, subscribe, comment below, share with your mates. Join us next time. Thanks.